What if I told you that alcohol, yes, that casual glass of wine or weekend buzz, might be disconnecting you from something far more important than your responsibilities? What if it's separating you from your soul? We call it a spirit. But have you ever asked why? Hidden in the word Al-Kuhul, its ancient root, is a disturbing secret. It once meant body-eating spirit, a substance used by alchemists to extract the soul from matter. This video isn't about guilt or judgment. It's about awareness. Because alcohol doesn't just lower inhibitions, it lowers your spiritual defenses. If you've ever felt anxious, hollow, or off after drinking, you're not imagining it. And what you're about to discover might change how you see alcohol forever. The word alcohol has traveled a long, strange journey, and it begins not in bars or vineyards, but in ancient alchemical texts. The Arabic term al-kuḥl originally meant a fine powder, often antimony sulfide, used as eyeliner in the Middle East. Yes, it began as something placed near the eyes. But here's the twist. Alchemists didn't stop there. They started using al-kuḥl as a metaphor for the distillation of spirit. To them, the goal wasn't to decorate the surface, but to extract the invisible essence of matter. In alchemical practice, al-kuḥl became known as a substance that could pull out the soul from any compound. It was the ultimate separator of spirit from body. Still think it's just coincidence. It gets stranger. In early European texts, al-kuḥl was translated not just as a chemical agent, but as a demonic force, a body-eating spirit, a vapor that removes the divine from the flesh. What were they seeing that we've forgotten? Many ancient mystics and spiritual healers viewed alcohol not merely as a drink, but as a gatekeeper, something that temporarily weakens your spiritual firewall, letting energies in that don't always leave when the buzz wears off. And perhaps that's why alcohol came to be known as spirits, a linguistic clue left in plain sight. Because whether we realize it or not, every sip alters more than just your state of mind. It alters your frequency, and it may even allow entities access to a field they otherwise couldn't enter. This isn't religious superstition, it's symbolic language that points to energetic realities. Just as your immune system protects your body, your aura protects your soul. But alcohol, it pokes holes in that field, it lowers the shields. And for those who are sensitive, it opens the doors to parasitic energy. That's why some ancient teachings treated alcohol like a spiritual solvent, a force that dissolves your sense of self, your moral clarity, your connection to source. Sometimes, the dissolution feels good, like a relief. But what's the cost of that relief? Is it possible that the very thing we use to let go is also the thing keeping us lost? Alcohol has never just been a drink. It's been a paradox, a divine gift in one culture, a spiritual danger in another, a sacred offering, and a forbidden substance. To understand this contradiction, we have to go back thousands of years. Before modern parties and happy hours, alcohol was a ritual tool. In Sumeria, it was offered to gods. In Egypt, it was buried with the dead to ease their journey through the underworld. In ancient Greece, Dionysus, god of wine and ecstasy, was worshipped as a bringer of liberation. But even then, liberation had a shadow. The same cultures that celebrated alcohol's power also feared its potential to unmake a soul. They weren't naive. They understood something we've forgotten. Every gateway opens both ways. The Sumerians believed that alcohol could loosen the tongue of the gods, but also loosen the boundary between realms, a tool of communion or a channel for chaos. In ancient Egyptian temples, priests used a type of fermented drink during initiations. But this was no recreational act. It was tightly controlled, symbolic, and sacred, because they knew that alcohol was a substance that altered frequency. Used without intention, it could sever one's alignment with Ma'at, the cosmic order. Even Dionysus, often depicted as a joyful god of wine and celebration, was also known as the god who drives. Min-mel, madness and ecstasy, two sides of the same coin. And in the Dionysian mysteries, participants were warned, without preparation, the wine could destroy you. Across the world in Vedic India, the Rig Veda spoke of soma, a drink believed to grant spiritual visions. But it wasn't alcohol, it was a psychoactive plant mixture. Meanwhile, in yogic texts like the Yoga Sutras, alcohol was discouraged. It was said to disturb the prana, the life force, to make the mind restless and the soul forgetful. Buddha himself taught the precept of refraining from intoxicants. Why? Not because of moralism, but because awakening requires presence. And alcohol clouds the clarity needed to pierce illusion. Even in Christianity, we see a split. Wine was used by Jesus during the Last Supper as a symbol of divine blood, but early mystics and desert fathers often abstained from alcohol entirely. To them, purity of perception was essential. To drink was to risk inviting interference from lower forces. Sufi mystics spoke of intoxication in poetic terms, but the real intoxication they praised was the overwhelming bliss of divine union. For them, literal drunkenness was a cheap imitation of what could only be earned through spiritual discipline. So why do we, in the modern world, pretend that alcohol is harmless? Why have we taken what was once approached with reverence or caution and turned it into background noise? The answer lies in what we've lost: context, intention, and sacredness. In the ancient world, substances that altered consciousness were handled like fire, powerful, transformative, but dangerous if misused. There was always ritual. There was always preparation. There were always consequences. Today, we drink to forget, to numb, to escape, but those old traditions whisper to us still. When you open your energy to intoxication, you're not just letting loose. You might be letting something in. Not all intoxication is divine. Not all bliss is truth. And perhaps the greatest contradiction is this: the more we drink to feel free, the more enslaved we become. Not to alcohol itself, but to the disconnection it causes. You've probably felt it before. The subtle shift that happens after just a few drinks. At first, there's a lightness, a blur that softens the edges of the world. But beneath that temporary high, something quieter begins to unravel. And it's not just chemical, it's energetic. Spiritual traditions across the globe have long warned that alcohol doesn't just affect the body. It weakens the aura, the invisible field of energy that surrounds and protects you. Some call it your light body, your biofield, your energetic immune system. Whatever the name, the principle remains the same. This field is your first line of spiritual defense. And alcohol? It cracks it open. According to mystics like Rudolf Steiner, alcohol interferes with the delicate interplay between your physical body and your higher spiritual faculties. He believed that alcohol loosens the etheric body from the physical body, creating a gap, an open space where confusion and darker energies can slip through. Think of your aura like a protective membrane. It filters information, energy, emotion, and helps keep your soul tethered to your center. But when alcohol enters the system, that filter weakens. You become porous, energetically leaky. And that's not just metaphor, it's measurable. Modern studies in bioelectromagnetics and Kirlian photography have shown that the human energy field changes shape, color, and intensity based on emotional and chemical states. After alcohol use, practitioners of energy healing often observe a collapse in auric integrity. The field dims, contracts, and becomes unstable. This can result in emotional volatility, sudden fatigue or depression, intuitive disconnection, a feeling of being haunted or watched, and for those on a spiritual path, these effects can be even more profound. Alcohol doesn't just cloud your judgment, it distorts your frequency. Why does this matter? Because your frequency is how you interact with the universe. It's how you attract people, situations, thoughts, and insights. Change the frequency, and you change what you magnetize. Under the influence of alcohol, your frequency drops, often dramatically. And like a radio tuned to static, you start picking up the wrong signals. Some mystics even go further. They believe alcohol doesn't just lower your vibration, it invites vibration that isn't yours. In this weakened state, your energy becomes susceptible to external interference, not just bad moods or social chaos, but actual energetic attachments. Call them entities, call them thought forms, call them echoes of unresolved trauma. Whatever the name, they behave like parasites, feeding off the chaos that alcohol opens the door to. And the scariest part, you often don't know they've entered, because they don't arrive with red flags. They arrive as numbness, apathy, confusion, emotional spirals. They show up when you can't quite find yourself anymore, when your compass feels broken and your soul feels far away. Ancient shamans knew this well. In many tribal traditions, individuals who suffered from alcohol addiction were believed to be spiritually fragmented. The soul, they said, had partially left the body, and unless the person healed and reintegrated, they would remain vulnerable to intrusion. This wasn't just poetic talk, it was a recognition of what alcohol really does to consciousness. Because in the end, alcohol doesn't just alter your mood, it alters your access to your higher self. And when you drink habitually, that access can become scarred, like a radio with a broken antenna. You may still receive messages from your intuition, but they're garbled. You may still feel spiritual presence, but it's faint. You may still dream, but the dreams are darker, harder to interpret, sometimes haunted. What alcohol disturbs isn't just your night. It's your alignment, your clarity, your channel. And here's the paradox. We often drink to feel more like ourselves, to loosen up, to connect, to let the real me out. But alcohol does the opposite. It dislodges you from your core. It lets you act freely, but at the cost of being fully connected. So the question isn't whether you can enjoy a glass of wine. The question is, what's the energetic price of that temporary release? And more importantly, who, besides you, might be slipping through the cracks you didn't mean to open? Your body isn't just flesh and bone. It's a symphony of frequencies, a multi-layered energy system where each chakra, each energy center, has a unique tone, vibration, and role in your evolution. When you drink alcohol, you don't just alter your brain chemistry. You alter the entire harmonic structure of your being, and the effects ripple through your chakra system, top to bottom, inside out. Let's break this down. The root chakra, your base, your connection to the physical world, is the first to react. Alcohol overstimulates it. That's why you feel grounded in your body at first, more sensual, more primal, more relaxed. It can feel pleasurable, safe, even empowering, but it's an illusion. Because while the root chakra becomes hyperactive, the upper chakras, the ones tied to insight, purpose, and spiritual connection, begin to shut down. The sacral chakra, which governs pleasure and emotion, becomes unstable. That's where the mood swings begin. The oversharing, the tears, the seductive energy, the rage. It's not that alcohol gives you new emotions, it just unfilters them, often in ways you later regret. Move up to the solar plexus, the center of willpower and identity. Here's where alcohol does something interesting. It numbs the ego, but not in a healing way. It gives the illusion of confidence while quietly disconnecting you from your true power. You feel bold, but disoriented. You speak louder, but forget what really matters. You take risks, but lose your inner compass. The heart chakra, This one hurts the most because alcohol often mimics love. It makes you feel open, connected, emotional. But that warmth, it's unstable. It can flip into anger, sadness, or despair without warning. The heart wants truth. But alcohol feeds it illusion. By the time it reaches the throat chakra, your voice, your authenticity, you may be speaking, but not as yourself. You say things you didn't mean. You reveal things you hadn't processed. Or you go completely silent, shutting down the part of you that speaks your truth. And then we get to the third eye, your inner vision, intuition, and insight. This is where things get dangerous. Alcohol blinds the inner eye. It scrambles the signal between your conscious mind and higher guidance. You might still receive intuitive impressions, but they're distorted, muddled, echoes instead of clarity. Finally, the crown chakra, your portal to source, to divinity, to the infinite. This is the part of you that knows, not just facts, but eternal truths. And this is where alcohol deals its most subtle blow. It cuts the cord, not forever, but long enough to forget who you are, long enough to misstep, to act against your own evolution. You see, alcohol acts like an energetic hijacker. It tricks your system into thinking you're opening up, when in truth you're closing off the higher frequencies. And while this may not be obvious after one drink, over time, the cumulative effect becomes harder to ignore. You feel duller, disconnected from your spiritual practices, blocked in your meditations, foggy when you try to listen within. And that's not coincidence. Because the chakras are not just symbolic wheels of energy, they're access points. And alcohol is like a software virus, slowing them down, distorting the input, or shutting them down entirely. Here's the paradox. We often drink to loosen up, to feel more ourselves, to silence the inner critic, but that inner critic is often your higher self trying to guide you through discomfort into growth. When you numb it, you silence the very voice that's trying to wake you up. Alcohol hijacks your lower centers, amplifying desire, survival, pleasure, while muffling the higher ones. Clarity, intuition, spiritual connection. It pulls you down the ladder of consciousness, and then it leaves you there, half asleep, half awake, energetically unguarded. Some traditions say this isn't accidental. That alcohol was designed to trap souls in density, to keep the higher chakras underdeveloped, and to lock humanity out of its own ascension. Whether you believe that or not, here's what's undeniable. Alcohol doesn't elevate. It dulls. It doesn't awaken. It sedates. And in a world desperate for clarity, it keeps you fogged, both in your mind and in your field. So next time you reach for a drink, ask yourself, which chakra am I feeding and which one am I starving? Because every sip is a choice, to ascend into alignment or to descend into disconnection. Across centuries and continents, through radically different cultures and belief systems, one strange pattern emerges. The great spiritual masters, from east to west, all cautioned against the use of alcohol. And they didn't just call it a bad habit. They called it an obstacle to enlightenment, not because they were moralists, not because they feared pleasure, but because they understood something we're only beginning to rediscover. You cannot ascend with a clouded mind, and you cannot merge with the divine when your frequency is being pulled down into chaos. Let's start in the East. In the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, texts that have guided seekers for millennia, there is a concept called saucha, purity, not just of the body, but of the mind, the energy, the environment. Alcohol was seen as an impurity, not because it was evil, but because it disrupted clarity. And clarity is the foundation of awakening. The Bhagavad Gita echoes this. Krishna, speaking to the warrior Arjuna, outlines the qualities needed for liberation from illusion: control of the senses, steadiness of mind, detachment from pleasure-seeking. Alcohol is the opposite. It inflames the senses. It fragments the mind. It amplifies attachment to short-term pleasure at the cost of long-term evolution. The Buddha went further. One of the 5 precepts of Buddhism, basic ethical guidelines followed by lay practitioners and monks alike, is this: I undertake the precept to abstain from intoxicants which cause heedlessness. That word, heedlessness, is key. To drink is not just to get buzzed, it is to lose your inner witness. And in Buddhism, the witness, the mindful observer, is sacred. Without it, you cannot see clearly. Without it, you cannot awaken. Now shift westward. In early Christianity, the Desert Fathers, mystics who lived in silence and solitude, abstained from alcohol entirely. To them, sobriety wasn't just a lifestyle choice. It was the path to communion with God. Yes, wine was used in rituals, but always symbolically, never indulgently, and always with reverence and intention, never as escape. Later Christian mystics, like Meister Eckhart, spoke of detachment as the path to union with the divine, to let go of all that clouds the soul. In that light, alcohol wasn't seen as sinful. It was seen as a barrier, a veil between the seeker and the source. Sufi mystics, too, had an intricate relationship with intoxication. Their poetry overflowed with metaphors of drunkenness, but those who read literally missed the point. The wine Rumi spoke of wasn't Merlot. It was ecstasy born of union with the beloved, a divine intoxication that required no chemical. To the Sufis, literal alcohol was a distortion of that divine state, a substitute, a counterfeit. In Taoism, the story was similar. Practices aimed at longevity and spiritual refinement discouraged alcohol, because alcohol was seen to scatter qi, the life force. And if your qi is scattered, your destiny becomes fragile. Why do these patterns matter? Because these teachings came from radically different eras, languages, and metaphysical frameworks, yet they all converge on the same message. To walk the path of spiritual awakening, you must be clear, present, aligned, and alcohol takes you in the opposite direction. Even modern-day spiritual teachers echo this truth. Ram Dass spoke often of how mind-altering substances could open the door, but if you needed them again and again to re-enter the room, then you hadn't really awakened. You'd only glimpsed a shortcut that looped you back into craving. And Krishnamurti, fierce in his rejection of dogma, taught one simple thing: truth is a pathless land, but to perceive truth, the mind must be free of distortion. Alcohol is distortion. It's the blur behind your eyes, the static in your energy, the glass between you and the mirror of who you really are. And if you're serious about awakening, if you're really here to remember, to align, to become whole, then alcohol isn't just a drink, it's a decision. To step closer to the light, or to stay one sip away from your soul. There's a moment just before the first sip hits your bloodstream, when everything still feels like a choice. But moments later, you're no longer fully steering. That shift isn't just poetic, it's neurological, and it's energetic. Science has long confirmed what mystics intuited: alcohol changes the brain. But what most people don't realize is just how much it warps our perception of self, energy, and connection. Let's begin with the obvious: the prefrontal cortex. This is your seat of higher decision-making, your ethical compass, your impulse control, your spiritual discernment. Alcohol suppresses this area first, which means the part of you that questions, reflects, and resists temptation goes dark, literally. And once that light dims, another system takes over: the limbic brain, your animal instinct. The result: you're more emotionally reactive, less present, more likely to act on base desire than higher intention. From a spiritual standpoint, this is massive. Because what defines spiritual growth is the ability to override impulse in favor of awareness, to choose response over reaction, presence over pattern. Alcohol collapses that capacity, and that collapse doesn't just affect you. It affects the entire energy field of the space you're in. Enter the science of biofield theory and group energy resonance. When people gather in a shared space, whether a family dinner, a party, or a meditation circle, their energetic fields sync up in subtle but measurable ways. It's been observed through heart rate variability, brainwave entrainment, and even magnetic field resonance. In short, we vibrate together, but introduce alcohol into that field, and the collective energy drops. Coherence turns into chaos. You've probably felt this. That moment at a party when the laughter turns loud, the conversations turn meaningless, the eyes go glazed. People seem present, but the energy feels hollow. Why? Because alcohol dissolves coherence. And coherence is the signature of higher consciousness. Researchers like Dr. David Hawkins, author of Power versus Force, measured different emotional states and their vibrational frequencies. Love, joy, and peace measured high, shame, guilt, and apathy low. Alcohol, he noted, tends to induce lower states, even if the outer behavior seems happy. It's not the volume of joy that matters. It's the depth of presence. And alcohol short-circuits that depth. Let's talk about dopamine, the brain's pleasure chemical. Alcohol spikes it temporarily, giving the illusion of reward. But over time, the baseline drops. The system becomes desensitized. You drink to feel normal, but end up feeling less than you started. This neurological shift is mirrored energetically. Energetic healers often observe that habitual drinkers develop an aura collapse around the solar plexus and crown chakras, a signature of disempowerment and disconnection from higher guidance. And socially, the patterns are haunting. Alcohol is often present at events marked by emotional repression or energetic escapism. Celebrations that feel forced, family dinners soaked in tension, romantic dates where vulnerability is numbed instead of embraced. Why? Because alcohol becomes a permission slip to bypass presence. Instead of sitting in discomfort and growing through it, we drown it. Instead of revealing truth, we slur over it. Instead of syncing with others, we scatter. Now consider this. If alcohol impairs the ability to consciously choose and weakens the energy field that shields your essence, then who or what is steering while you're not? The ancient warnings return, this time echoed through MRI scans and EEG machines. Your consciousness, your awareness, is not a constant. It fluctuates, it dims, it opens and closes like a lens. And alcohol, it doesn't. Just blur the lens. It invites static into the signal. The implications are massive. In shamanic traditions, altered states are approached with ritual, intention, and guidance. But in modern life, alcohol is consumed mindlessly, casually, repeatedly. So what does that say about our relationship to consciousness itself? If something can consistently dim your awareness, lower your frequency, impair your coherence, and damage your connection to self and others, shouldn't that trigger more than just a health warning? Shouldn't it awaken a spiritual alarm? Because this isn't just about liver function, it's about energetic sovereignty. And every drink pulls you a little further from the command center of your soul. The science and the spiritual teachings are now pointing to the same conclusion. Alcohol doesn't just numb the pain, it numbs the connection to yourself, to others, to the field of awareness you were born to explore. The most important truth we can say about alcohol and the spiritual consequences it brings is this: you are not broken, you are not ruined, you are simply out of tune. And tuning back in is not only possible, It's sacred. Healing from the spiritual effects of alcohol isn't about punishment or penance. It's about remembering who you are beneath the fog, the noise, the disconnection. It's about slowly, gently bringing your energy system back into harmony. So where do you begin? First, awareness. Just becoming conscious of alcohol's impact on your energy already starts to shift things. The moment you stop gaslighting yourself, saying it's just one drink or everyone does it, and begin asking, what is this actually doing to me? You reignite your inner compass. Awareness is the seed, but awareness must become action. Let's talk about cleansing, not in the detox tea way, but in the energetic sense. The breath is the most ancient and direct way to reset your frequency. Simple breath awareness begins to mend the energetic rips caused by alcohol. When combined with visualization, imagine golden light clearing your chakras or your aura expanding in strength. The results become powerful. Even 10 minutes a day of mindful breathing can start to rebuild your auric field. Think of it like repairing a subtle immune system. Alcohol disconnects you from source. Nature plugs you back in. Spend time barefoot on the ground. Sit near trees. Listen to the sound of water or wind without distraction. Nature doesn't just relax the mind. It resets the frequency grid of your energy body. Shamans believe that trees and natural spaces emit coherent vibrations that realign the human field. Your nervous system and your aura remember their original blueprint in nature. The energy disrupted by alcohol must be moved, gently, consciously. Yoga rebalances the chakras. Qigong restores qi and reconnects the meridians. Ecstatic dance liberates emotional blocks trapped in the energy field. These aren't workouts, they're rituals of reconnection. Moving your body with intention is a way to tell your soul, I'm back. I'm listening. Often after quitting alcohol, there's shame, a sense of regret for years lost, people hurt, energy drained. But the healing doesn't happen through self-blame, it happens through reclamation. Start by thanking your body, thank your energy field for enduring the distortion. Thank your intuition for staying faintly lit, even when you couldn't hear it. Speak to yourself like a temple that was under renovation, not one that was destroyed. Gratitude is not sentimental fluff. It's a vibrational reset button. It realigns you with love. And love is the fastest way back into coherence. One of the trickiest traps alcohol sets is isolation. It gives the illusion of social ease, while slowly pulling you away from meaningful connection. Rebuilding means surrounding yourself with others who respect your path, not just tolerate it. Find spiritual circles, join breathwork groups, share your story without shame, because when you're witnessed in your healing, your auric field responds by expanding and your nervous system begins to trust again. 6. Ritual and intention. Your spirit was numbed through unconscious habit. It can be reawakened through conscious ritual. Light a candle when you meditate, write intentions under the moon, create a small altar that reminds you of your commitment to clarity. Rituals anchor your new vibration into the material world. They tell the universe, I'm here, I'm conscious, I choose to remember. Reclaiming your spiritual clarity after alcohol isn't about never making mistakes again. It's about choosing over and over to come back to center. And when you do, something incredible happens. You begin to sense yourself again, the real you, the sober soul that was always there, waiting patiently behind the veil. And in that moment, you realize this was never about giving something up. It was always about getting something back, your clarity, your wholeness, your signal to the divine. There comes a moment, quiet and almost unnoticeable, when you sit alone, sober, present, and something begins to return, not a rush, not a high, but a stillness, a truth, a frequency you hadn't felt in years. That frequency is you, without distraction, without fog, without needing to escape or entertain or numb. Just you, raw, luminous, divine. And in that moment, you realize something powerful. You never needed alcohol to feel alive. You only needed to stop running from your own aliveness, because your essence, your soul, your signal, your sacred identity was never missing. It was simply buried, under noise, under coping, under culture. What you've been searching for in the bottle was actually the version of you that didn't need it anymore. And now you're meeting them, not because you followed a guru, not because you joined a movement, but because you had the courage to ask, what is this doing to my soul? And even more courage to listen. The world will still try to sell you escape. It will wrap it in glitter and laughter and promises of ease. But now you know the difference between freedom and numbing, between connection and codependence, between being high and being whole. The truth is, alcohol was never the enemy. It was the teacher, a mirror that revealed where you abandoned yourself. And now that mirror has cracked, not from shame, but from awakening. Because when you no longer need to drink to feel joy, when you no longer need to blur your vision to feel safe, when you choose to be fully here, fully now, fully clear, you have reclaimed something, sacred sovereignty, and with it comes a subtle magic. You hear your intuition again. Your dreams return with clarity. Your body feels like home instead of a battleground. Your heart doesn't just feel, it guides. You're no longer operating on autopilot. You're creating from presence, from soul, from source. That's the real high. That's the real liberation. And yes, there may still be cravings, moments of nostalgia, flashbacks of the fun you once had while disembodied. But now you see the price tag. You see the energetic debt that comes from checking out. And you choose to stay checked in, not because it's always easy, but because it's always real. And real is where the soul lives. So if you're here now, watching this, feeling this, it's not by chance. You didn't stumble into this message. You summoned it, because some part of you is ready to come home. And if you've already started this path, if you've let go of alcohol or even begun questioning it, know this: every clear, conscious moment you choose is an act of spiritual rebellion in a world addicted to avoidance. So breathe that in. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are exactly where your soul needs you to be, awake, aware, and finally, free. If this message spoke to something deep in you, if it stirred something you couldn't quite name, then this is your invitation to keep going. Like this video, if it helped you reconnect to your truth. Subscribe for more spiritually grounded content that challenges illusions and empowers your evolution. And don't stop here. There are more videos on this channel about energy, awakening, and reclaiming your sacred power, and one of them is appearing on your screen right now. Trust the nudge. Watch what calls to you. And most of all, thank you for being here. Thank you for remembering. We'll see you in the next one. Stay clear, stay sovereign, stay true.